Welcome, Frames family, to week 6. I am your host, Nate Markham. Jorge is in North Carolina celebrating his 5th wedding anniversary with lovely Melissa. Happy anniversary, you two. Filling in for him, obviously, is, well, you get me. But luckily, you also get these two beautiful faces. To my right, maybe your left, is Brian Ford at FF Junkie. Brian, obviously, how you doing this morning?
Pretty good. Getting ready for a nice full day of football and watching my fantasy teams disappoint me.
Perfect. I would say, speaking of disappointment, but I'm not disappointed by this edition this week. I am overjoyed. I don't get Jorge, but instead, I think I'm going to say we upgraded a little bit. So this is the anniversary. I should be nice to him. But Dave Ibrahim, family member with Frames family, long distant cousin from overseas, visiting us. How you doing, Dave?
Not too bad. Yeah, I got to question Jorge's loyalty. He's choosing marriage and happiness over fantasy football, guys. You know, Jorge, if you're listening, get your priorities right, okay? I'm joking.
He had to put it on mute really fast, so that he's watching it. Poor guy. He tries to take time off, and he's much deserved. And found out
he's in Asheville. Actually, I had a couple of friends live there. They loved it. It's meant to be a pretty cool town. Yeah.
He said there's more breweries per capita than any other city in the country.
You're kidding.
So I of course, I fact checked to make sure that he was how close it was, and it is. It's there. It's Portland, Maine, and that are like 1 and 2. So
it's a pretty hip town, relative to the rest of the state. It's kind of like the Austin of North Carolina.
Oh, that's a good comparison. I've heard. I have a friend that moved to Austin. They said just nonstop. If you ever want to do something, it's there's always something going on. And so I've never been. Have you guys been to Austin?
Yeah, I've been to Austin. It's a pretty cool town. No. Yeah. It used to be actually San Diego, where I'm from, was the number 1 brewery town in the country, but I think we've been surpassed pretty quickly. But we do have like 320 microbreweries. In the whole town.
Really?
It's absurd.
That is absurd.
That's a lot of IPAs, guys. Let's be honest. That's all it really is. Just a stronger IPA. But
do you like IPAs?
I don't mind them, to be honest.
Brian?
I don't drink anymore, but when I did, it's okay. No, it's okay. I drank anything. I was like, okay, you got it. I'll drink it. So yeah.
IPAs are weird because sometimes it leaves that bad taste in your mouth. That I'd say hairy tongue is probably a really bad descriptive way to say it. But what it does is it leaves that same taste that week 6 seems to leave in my mouth. In that it is, segue. Thanks. Is that it feels like we're in the infirmary. I know COVID season. There's always COVID season or whatever, but we're not hot and heavy in this COVID update scenario. But there's a lot going on. I mean, there really are. I feel like we're in the infirmary. Every game, every team seems to have 5 did not practices. Spontaneous not playing. People are out here and there. I mean, I feel like we're shocked more this week, this year, really, this week, especially with the breaking news. Nick Chubb being out. Typically, if your person's going to be trending out, usually you kind of build up to it. And then all of a sudden, bam, Nick Chubb's out. Bam. You don't have, who was it? 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was 2 or 3 different game time decisions that weren't even expected.
Dalvin Cook surprised me a little bit.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that. I thought he was going to try suit up.
And that's exactly right. And the same thing this week. And so I thought that normally, we kind of touch on just 1 or 2 different things, but I feel like we might need to even go game by game just a little bit and kind of break down and dig a little deeper into what's going on. And, Brian and I were talking a little bit about some of the games. And so, David, I'll be interested to hear some of your input as this, into some of these as well. And, we'll start in Green Bay and Chicago. One of the big losses to me is with Kevin King. He was not a big loss to Green Bay because he's not a good corner. But when you lose him and Jair Alexander, you have this lack of depth in the cornerbacks. Without having those 2 there, how comfortable are you still with starting Allen Robinson?
Myself, Allen Robinson. Look, I still like Allen Robinson. Here's the thing: he's one of those players that's getting faded. I saw a trade in our league this week. Amon St. Brown straight up for Allen Robinson. I mean,
Whoa.
that's absurd. It's the world we're living in right now. He's still a talent, and he's still the number one receiver on that team. Volume will come. It's going to be a bounce back, especially with those corners. I mean, that's where Allen Robinson feasts outside the numbers. So I'm expecting a big bounce back game. If you're able to get him on a trade for cheap, I think you're very lucky.
Brian had told me that there was a lot of leagues that, and this is a fair statement, forced to play Allen Robinson because you have no other options with bye weeks. And I think that's a fair statement in a lot of people's regards to him, is that, oh man, I have to play. You don't have a choice. And I think that's where it's going to pay dividends. We're going to see maybe that big week finally, because there's no, Green Bay has nobody to stop them. Honestly, it's just a matter of Justin Fields getting in the ball and Matt Nagy and probably, I guess, Bill Lazor getting plays designed to put Justin Fields in a positive script and situation. But Cincinnati and Detroit is the next game up, and and there's a couple questionable things. Joe Mixon is the one that I have a question for both of you two. How much do you believe the coach speaks? So here's the quote is that Zach Taylor said that Joe Mixon's going to get a quote unquote full set of reps. Now, coming off of a 28%, the snaps last week, Brian, you were talking Samaje Perine out-snapped him. Without Samaje Perine, due to COVID, do you think that Joe Mixon does get, let's set the over-under at 75% of the rushing attempts?
I'm gonna say over.
Okay.
And my question is, rhetorically, who else? They called up Travion Williams from the practice squad, and I read on a notification that they expect him to be the backup to Mixon and maybe not Chris Evans. I don't know that, with Mixon 1 week healthier, that you're going to really trust either of them with a bunch of carries. So I'm going to say over 75%.
The one thing I would say is the Bengals' usage of Mixon really depends on whether or not they're up or down. They're not like the Panthers who Christian McCaffrey, whether they're losing or winning, will be in there. Mixon, they ground and pound with him if they've got a 1+ touchdown lead and burn the clock. So I'm actually not expecting him. Look, I think this is going to be Detroit's bounce back game. They've been pretty unlucky the last few games.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, a lot of them have been, crazy field goals by Justin Tucker or, obviously the field goal last week as well. So they're not as bad a team as people are making them out to be. So I don't know if we're really going to see a blowout game. For that reason, I don't think we're going to see a ton of Mixon. I'm expecting carries, maybe a few catches out of backfield. I think you're really relying on him falling in the end zone if there's a penalty in the on the 1 yard line.
Okay. I think both of those two outcomes can happen. I still think he can have over 75% of the rushing attempts and still not be heavily utilized if they stay in the air.
Sure.
Because Detroit is, they siphon some yards through them. The biggest question, like you said, will Detroit offense get it going enough without maybe passing options? Amon-Ra St. Brown we can talk about in a little bit. DeAndre Swift battling a groin injury. Jamal Williams battling hip and illness through the week. Be interesting to see how that unfolds. Houston and Indy. I don't know if there's much to say in the game other than, Laramie Tunsil. And I found this out. There's a lot of offensive line casualties this week that I think people need to pay more attention to than what we do. I think Brian and I both were talking before this aired, is that we fall prey to just looking at up highs and lows and who's in and who's out at the actual skill positions and not the people that are going to be opening up these situations. Laramie Tunsil, their starting tackle, is out. He's on the IR. So you have this potential, I'd say, pressure on Davis Mills even more so. There's nobody on Houston's offense that I'm really excited about. Obviously, Brandon Cooks. Exactly.
Here's the thing. Brandon Cooks is your likely wide receiver 3 or 4. So if you've got your wide receiver 3 or 4 with potentially 10 targets, 8 catches for even 80 yards, I mean, I'm pretty happy with that. He's not, you've probably got like a DeAndre Hopkins and Mike Evans or something as your 1 and 2. So it's a good safety blanket to have in your flex or wide receiver 3.
Yeah. And I don't think either defense is really stopping many people in that game. So, I mean, you could do worse this week than Cooks.
Well, and on the other side, you talk about defense. Houston's defense is probably both of them have some injuries throughout, and we'll touch on some of the offensive players later in terms of how this can affect maybe from the Indianapolis side. But on Indy's defense, Kimoko Ture is out, Andrew Sendejo is out. On Houston, Desmond King, their corner, is out, so you're going to see maybe a little better potential matchup. T.Y. Hilton's activated. When he gets back on the field, are either one of you two actually comfortable starting him or rostering him whatsoever?
T.Y. who?
Yes.
Exactly. That's Pittman's field there. I mean, it's, between him, Pascal, they're using the tight ends more. I think he's there more as a coach or mentor to the young wide receivers there, to be honest. I mean, obviously I'm not taking away from what T.Y.'s done over the years. Once upon a time, he was he was an absolute fantasy stud, but he's not going to be there in every snap, running tons of routes kind of guy. I mean, they're trying to phase him out a little bit. I was expecting him to retire after this year, to be honest.
At one point, I was also 180 pounds. So if someone wants to pay me to be a health coach to come in and show people what I could have done, you can gladly pay me $16 million a year. I will come on in and tell you how to do a push-up. Maybe not by demonstration, but the Rams and the Giants. Obviously, we know Saquon's out, Kenny Galladay's out. Everybody's trending back upwards. Slayton, Shepard, Daniel Jones, wobbly as he may be, is back. Both of you two, I have a question. So Brian and I on Wednesday had a flex off with Kadarius Toney and Rondale Moore. Kadarius Toney, Brian had the fortune of backing, who was in a great, could have been in a better, maybe on Wednesday was a better situation. But more news is coming. They think that Ramsey is probably going to stick in the slot more times than not to take on Kadarius Toney. So my question would be to you, Brian, is with that knowledge now, we should be a little bit more concerned about Kadarius Toney. Is that correct?
Yes, I think so. I think he did show good separation against Dallas, but Ramsey's probably an upgrade over the folks covering him in that game. Add in that Daniel Jones now has a definitely Shepard and even a limited Slayton as other options. Yeah, I'd be concerned about Toney.
Yeah.
See, here's the thing. I mean, Mike Evans, when he went up against Jalen Ramsey, I don't know the exact stats, but I'm pretty sure he got about 7 catches for nearly 100 yards. Too bad against Jalen Ramsey. That was, I want to say, week 3, I believe. Look, let's not. Is Kenny Golladay officially out? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Galladay's out.
But I mean, Shepard and Slayton, they're good receivers. So I think they're going to mix it up a little bit. I think we're going to see Jalen Ramsey, not necessarily just man covering Toney. I think it's going to be a little bit of a mix, to be honest. So there are going to be times where he's going to be one-on-one with the number 2 cornerback over there.
Yeah. And there's, again, with corner wide receiver matchups, as much as we like to think that we can use historical trends to base an argument around, for the most part, even some corners that shadow exclusively sometimes don't shadow if the situation of the defensive coordinator wants to mix and match. We're kind of at their disposal. But either way, I do think that it does reduce that. I don't think we'll see that 10-catch, 170 performance out of Kadarius Toney this week. Is probably not a good floor to set or a baseline. But from upside,
I don't mind Devontae Booker. I don't mind Booker. Look, I mean, you're probably having to play him as your RB2 or something, which is a little bit disgusting. But don't forget that when to the Broncos, there was a stage where when CJ Anderson went down, Devontae Booker was an RB1 for multiple weeks. So he's got the potential. I'm not saying he's the same guy he was 3 years ago, but he definitely has the potential. They used him as a pass catching and a ground and pound last week. So similar to Joe Mixon, I think if the Giants are lucky enough to get a lead, I think we're going to see a lot of Devontae Booker,
The thoughts and views of the Giants taking a lead over the Los Angeles Rams are not the
crazy
thoughts
things have happened.
That's true.
All the NFL.
You're actually very right. Nothing's gonna shock me. Jorge jumps in to say on the road. Just wanted to say hi. Hey, Jorge. Oh, he's maybe listening to us with his phone up while driving. Pay attention to the road, and happy anniversary. Melissa obviously has not killed him yet, so that's a plus. 5 years and a day. Congratulations. Next game is one near and dear to both Jorge and I. Kansas City and
Yes.
Washington. I think that's why he took this weekend off. He didn't want to have to face me in this KC versus Washington matchup. What a chicken.
Are you concerned about the Chiefs?
Hell yeah, I'm concerned about the Chiefs.
I mean,
I'm
I've got to be
100%
honest.
concerned.
Up until I know Mahomes is obviously, talent-wise, probably the best quarterback in the league, but play from week 1 to week 5, Justin Herbert is the better overall quarterback right now. Mahomes,
I have
not
no problem.
But still, it's crazy. I mean, I definitely didn't see a world where the Chiefs were 2-3. That's for sure.
No,
Yeah.
I feel like his Mahomes looks off in terms of there's a lot more passes. So the one thing that I've seen is that if you look at the stat risky throws and contested throws, he is near the bottom of the league. Now, I don't mean bottom in terms of the most risky throws. He's the least risk adverse, and he's been unlucky with a lot of the turnovers, a lot of the weird deflections off the receiver's hands, things of that nature. But that happens to everybody. But his inaccuracy is what is getting me. He seems to miss throws more this year than he has. And it's, again, 5 weeks. Would it shock anybody, either one of you two, if for the next 10 games the Chiefs go, 9-0 and Mahomes puts up 350, 3 touchdowns every week? No. But their depth was a concern, and that depth is being targeted again this week with Tyreek Hill, who has got a limited practice on Friday. He's probably going to play today, but would you rather have Tyreek Hill? If you're a Tyreek Hill manager, do you want him? Would you rather have him be in this situation, which is maybe a decoy, or just be outright out and be able to choose someone else that you think is going to play and not have to worry about that wishy-washy week?
I mean, I'd probably rather have him out, so it's very clear what the situation is, because as a possible decoy, I'm not sitting Tyreek Hill, right? So he's playing, and then I risk that, and I'm gonna be mad at myself because somebody else is gonna do well, and he gets 2 targets or something like that.
Yeah. It's
a tough situation. It really is, but you're running them out there because your options probably aren't very good.
I 100% agree there. That guys like Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill, it's painful because if they're starting, you cannot sit them. You just cannot. So I actually would prefer, if there is an injury, I'd prefer them be completely out. Play a Mecole Hardman. I'd much rather do a healthy Mecole Hardman than is Tyreek going to be a decoy? Is he not? Because you'd regret it, benching Tyreek and seeing him go off on your bench, 181 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Exactly.
That's the kind of potential the guy is,
Even with, limited on the week and a little banged up. All right, both of you two, over under the stupid Josh Gordon over under prop, which I can't stand, but 6.5 points, half point PPR. Brian, over under.
I'm going to go with my heart. Not that my head has much of a difference here, but listen, I'm okay with smoking weed and doing drugs. Whatever, do your thing. I don't think the NFL should have a policy that outlaws that kind of stuff. Josh Gordon is washed. Under. He's stop.
I right there with you. But
his big year was what? I want to say 2013, the year that he did the back-to-back 200-yard games. I mean, come on, guys. So we got to I'm not saying he's not a talented player, but he is not Josh Gordon of 2013,
The
regardless of the fact that he's got Mahomes throwing to him. I get it, but yeah.
Well, that's the whole point of this exercise, is for me not to draw attention to say, hey, what if with Josh Gordon, but more or less, this is where we're at. The question of an over-under on one of the most dynamic offenses, maybe without a Tyreek Hill and with Patrick Mahomes throwing you the ball, and I have to set the over-under at 6.5, and everybody cringes and goes, ugh, no, thank you. Done. You're done. That's it.
Best case scenario, he's the third receiver on that team. You got Kelsey, and let's assume Hill is out. You got Hardman. Best case, he's the number 3 option for Patrick Mahomes. So I'm not putting my faith in a potential. And look, can Josh Gordon be the kind of player who just goes for a 75-yard touchdown? Absolutely. We've seen him do it multiple times. But you're just crossing your fingers for a Hail Mary type of thing.
Exactly.
Nate, question. You're a Chiefs fan. say I have an injured Saquon, Chris Carson, Monty, CMC, somebody, right?
Right.
I picked up
I got
Darrell Williams
those
on.
exact players.
I picked up Darrell Williams on waivers. He's the lead back today, but he is Darrell Williams. What should I expect from him?
Honestly, I would expect the Chiefs to most likely. What I think is going to happen is they're going to have to pass. I don't think they're going to be in a position to run the ball too much. I worry that with their lack of depth on both offense and defense, that's the Chiefs' biggest downfall, is they don't have a ton of depth pieces to fill in, replace. That's Chris Jones is out on the defensive line, which means that I think Washington's going to have a little bit of extra time to penalize that Chiefs defense that's already been a little susceptible. No pass rush means the corners, which were already pretty bad right now, can't keep up with who. I hope Terry McLaurin's healthy and it's fine. Same with Antonio Gibson, but my expectations would be about, I think the receiving game, he can be moderately involved. 4 catches, maybe 40 yards, and I think probably 50. So I'm gonna say 9 to 10 points, probably a decent flex play. Nothing. I don't think the ceiling is 20 points personally. I mean, I think it's a little lower, but we have if you want to hear.
Well, here's the thing. Let's be honest. I mean, the Chiefs, they're a private jet plane team. They love the air. They're always going on the air, man. They're not a ground and pound team. Last time they were a ground and pound team was probably Jamal Charles back in 2014, 15, right? I mean, really, other than that, who's been a down?
Well, Kareem Hunt led the league in rushing. Then,
very true.
But I know what you mean.
Correction. You're right. Yeah, Kareem Hunt was there. But still, I mean, after Kareem left, let's be honest, the running game really was not a focal point of the Chiefs' whole offense. And I don't expect that to change regardless of which running back goes there.
Right. Well, here's a start-sit question. Using Washington as an example. Jorge asks us, Terry McLaurin or Chuba Hubbard in a half-point PPR scoring?
It's McLaurin. It's easily McLaurin.
Yeah, I'd have. Yeah, TMC. Yeah, I think the Washington Kansas City game, even without Tyreek Hill, could probably be higher scoring than some people are expecting. And I think if you're given points for receptions, then I think you have to go McLaurin. Yeah,
I would agree with that. Everybody's been just pilfering and pillaging the Chiefs defense, and I don't think that stops this week, unfortunately. Even with IDP news, by the way, Daniel Sorensen is being relegated to a reserve role, and Juan Thornhill stepping back in, which is going to be good from IDP standpoint. Has no bearing on this question, but I figured I'd throw it in there because, well, I like IDP and I can do what I want. Next question. Again, this is from a George Edwards, Jorge's brother. Deontay Johnson against the Seattle secondary that's suspect, or Terry McLaurin versus Kansas City?
That is a good question.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah.
Golly, what a great problem to have, man.
Oh, I think I'm leaning towards Deontay. With Juju out, I mean, Deontay is, PPR monster, and he was the focal point last year of the whole offense. I think the Steelers are starting to look better. Ben looked decent last week, so I mean, you're not going to go wrong either way, but if I had to lean one way, you're going to go Deontay Johnson.
Okay, I was originally leaning there. I'm a big Deontay fan, but let me say that, Ben Roethlisberger also has Najee to throw to, Chase Claypool. Over in Washington, Ricky Seals-Jones, McKissick out of the backfield, maybe. So there's a case for both, I guess.
I think defenses are going to have to respect Chase Claypool. He is an absolute speed monster. So you're going to be putting one of your top. The secondary is going to be focused on him just as much as Deontay. So I think Deontay gets a lot of one-on-one where they're trying to stop the deep threat. I mean, Chase Claypool, he's got to be one of the fastest guys in the league. Like, you throw him a post route, if he's in the area, he's probably going to go for a touchdown. So I think a lot of the underneath routes are going to go to Deontay. So if it is that same half-point PPR league, you're probably looking at 9 catches. So at least you're getting 4.5 points there and maybe 80 yards. So it's a good safety blanket. Once again, he's probably your wide receiver 2 or 3, if I'm guessing anyway. So
true.
Well, the good news is that it sounds like both options, if you ask me, are probably going to come in. Like, for instance, I guess I would go with Deontay Johnson because I have Deontay as my wide receiver 13 on the week, and I have Terry McLaurin just below that. So, no, I don't. Scratch that. Switch it around. I moved Terry McLaurin up with the news that Chris Jones is out. I have McLaurin ahead of Deontay Johnson now. You think I should know that, right? Isn't that crazy?
It's a lot to keep track of.
It is a lot to keep track of, but that's okay. That's why I have the internets and phones and everything else. Melissa tuning in and chiming in on Jeremy Chin. Stick with him or move on. She likes to hit close to home with me. Obviously, being a big Jeremy Chin fan, it's hard to stick with him right now because the production hasn't been there. But if you peel away the onion layers and you look at what the player has been or what hopefully can be, you see a safety with top 5, really top 2 or 3 presence in the box as a safety, which to me is always a good base level, a good floor to establish tackle volume on a good defense that I think, fortunately, unfortunately, the offense is starting to slow down a little bit. Sam Darnold's showing a little bit of some kinks in the armor. And I think that this might mean that Carolina is going to have to be on the field a little bit more defensively. I'm still sticking with Jeremy Chin, but I think that there's options to kind of just let him ride the pine maybe for a week or two. Melissa, hopefully that helps. If you are in an IDP league against Jorge, I would say start Jeremy Chin this week, just because I think that banged up Justin Jefferson and Thielen, maybe they'll put it on the ground a little bit more. Moving on to the next game was Minnesota, Carolina. CMC's out. Shaq Thompson is a defensive is a linebacker that's out for that. I talked about Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. Any concern with any of these? A little bit of banged up. So on the week, Justin Jefferson had missed. Not really. He missed Wednesday and Thursday. Got eliminated on Friday. Adam Thielen is always kind of banged up, but he missed the same. Could have been just turnaround time and a little bit of easing both of those two in. No concerns with either one of those two receivers, correct?
No.
From an injury standpoint, or like them gonna see snaps. No, I'm in general. I'm concerned about Thielen for sure. There any day now he could have a 2-touchdown game, but he is not putting up the numbers we expect.
He's surprisingly, for a small guy, still the red zone threat.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you can see last week, I know didn't catch as many, but Cousins was still looking for him every single time in the red zone. So he has that upside that, he might only get 40 yards, but the chance of him actually getting, a TD, it's pretty high, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. It is, but that's it. Touchdown dependent.
Yeah,
it's right. I actually, I traded him away. I traded him and Nick Chubb on Tuesday to in a home league here for Devontae Adams and Allen Robinson to a team that needed running back. And then, of course, Chubb gets hurt. I'm sure people are pissed off. They think that I must have known something. I clearly had no clue on Tuesday that Nick Chubb was going to miss time, but I'm going to say hooray. But it is what it is. Kurt, if you're listening, sorry about that. Moving on to the Chargers and Baltimore. Chargers have couple key losses this week. Nasir Adderley, safety's out with a hip injury. Drew Tranquil is out, starting linebacker. Brian and I had a conversation earlier. Dave, I want you to tell me what you think of this possible scenario. Mike Williams, battling a little bit of an inflamed knee, has not practiced, has gotten unlimited practice. There's talks that he may be a decoy, a la the Tyreek Hill conversation. If you're a Mike Williams owner, are you starting him with confidence? Or actually, is there any chance that you're not starting him if he's actually good to go?
It's one of those obvious answers of it depends on what your other options are. I mean, if you're in Jorge's situation where you've got Deontay Johnson or Terry McLaurin, I'm definitely starting them over Mike Williams. I do worry about that because Herbert doesn't just have one favorite go-to guy. I mean, he'll go to Jared Cook. He'll go to Guyton. Obviously, Keenan Allen, Eckler out of the backfield. So if he is truly a decoy, Herbert's not going to take that risk with Mike Williams. So I do worry a little bit. It's a tough situation where he's just been so talented and on fire, these first 5 weeks. I mean, he's probably the steal of the draft if we're being real. You got him probably in the 11th round or something absurd. So you probably got better options is I guess my drafted 4 or 5 wide receivers ahead of him. If I have better options, I'm taking him, but I'm not putting him as my wide receiver 1 or 2 with full confidence. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I could probably pick and choose a ton of different options that makes you go, like Tyler Boyd or Mike Williams. Tyler Boyd is in that weird, he's maybe the wide receiver 3 in this with T. Higgins back and everybody against a bad Detroit team, but it's hard to sit Mike Williams. It really is. Yeah. Even as a decoy, Brian, I think we were saying, and a point that I like is that he's big body. If he was a 5'10", like Tyreek Hill, even like a little fade route in the end zone or a go up and get it, even with a bulky knee, he has that size to be able to go up and come down with the ball. You get a touchdown pretty much out of your wide receiver 3, you got value, most likely. Yeah. So Baltimore is down Ronnie Stanley, and then Villanueva, the other tackle, has been questionable, limited practice, a little banged up. I have to think that Los Angeles ends Joey Bosa, most importantly, is going to have a field day trying to get to Lamar. Or Rashad Bateman back into the fold. Maybe. Does Rashad Bateman, maybe with Lamar Jackson under duress potentially and on the run, do you think that he has an opportunity to get some snaps and maybe get a couple looks his direction? Dave?
I'm not taking that risk. I'm not taking the risk with Rashad Bateman. We don't know who he is right now. I mean, he's obviously coming off an injury. They're very much a run-first team with their running back 1, Lamar Jackson. The top 2 guys there are Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews. So he's fighting for the number 3 spot if they're in a situation where it's a shootout. I mean, let's be honest, Monday night game, the only reason that really turned out the way it was is because they had to come back, from 22 to 3 or something like that. And they just went to the air. So you're really relying on that. I don't think we're going to see that much of a score line from the Chargers-Ravens game. So, no, I'm not that excited. I mean, that's a real sort of desperation play, in my opinion.
Yeah, Bateman's a player that I like, but Greg Roman said they're not going to throw him into the fire this week, so I don't expect many targets. There are some really deep dynasty teams where my other options are pretty gross, where he's my 3rd flex in a couple of them, but
gotcha.
But if I'm in a normal redraft or anything like that, I'm not playing Bateman yet.
No, that's fair. And I mean, other than that, the pieces are, pretty much in play. Obviously, that's going to be the makings for a high-scoring game. Should be a fun game to watch. I mean, that's 2 really, really fun teams to watch on the offensive side. Both defenses, at least Baltimore's defense, has struggled. The Chargers, without some of those key defensive players, could leave the middle of the field open for Lamar. Look for Derwin James to probably have a monster game this week. And I'll talk about maybe a linebacker later on the Chargers side. Arizona at Cleveland is another intriguing game. If you ask me, as far as injuries and who's in and who's out, it's chock full of potential. So starting on the Arizona side, Rodney Hudson, starting center, is out. That is key. Obviously, offenses can run through the center position for calling out defenses, setting everything up, and the connection, between him and Kyler. DeAndre Hopkins is back. He came back from limited practice, mostly from injury related or from illness related, but he's good to go. It's the Cleveland side of the ball that has a ton of question marks and a ton of who knows what's, I guess. Yeah, a ton of question marks, we'll say. Nick Chubb is obviously out. We talked about that briefly. Kareem Hunt is got limited practices. I've heard 2 different scenarios here, Dave. You tell me which side you would trust. Side A, Kevin Stefanski says that he's going to give a set amount of touches that he wants Kareem Hunt to have. Side B that I've seen states that Kareem Hunt's going to get in the most workload he's had all season. Is there can those 2 things be both accurate, or are you catching some coach speak or maybe some Twitter speak?
I never get too sucked up into that that coach speak. I mean, oh, we're going to use this guy more. We're not. How often does that stuff actually pan out? The coach speak. It never does. I mean, Kareem Hunt is a talent. I mean, we've spoke about him before. Probably after Jamal Charles being a focal point of that Chiefs offense back with Alex Smith, he's got that potential to be an overall running back one. So if he's on the field and he's relatively healthy, I'm expecting a lot of usage with Kareem Hunt.
So Brian,
yes,
talking about the Browns.
Yes.
Two key areas of concern for me would be Jedrick Wills, starting tackle, ankle injury. Right now, he's not ruled out, I don't believe, unless something's changed in the last few minutes. But he's a definite pay attention to, huge potential for loss. And then on the other side, Jack Conklin did not practice Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So now you have Jack Conklin and you have Jedrick Wills. Conklin's one of the best run blocking tackles in the league. They brought him over from Tennessee. Jedrick Wills protecting Baker's blind side. You have two tackles both out, banged up Kareem Hunt. You have Jarvis Landry out. Odell Beckham is washed. What do we think for this offense with the potential losses that they've seen?
Yeah, I'm a little worried about Cleveland this week with those key injuries. I think if you have Kareem Hunt, chances are you're going to have to play him, in a week where we have injuries and buys. But if you can avoid, if you're in a super flex and you have a third quarterback that you can put in instead of Baker, I would, because you're counting on him to probably make some, what do they call it, off-platform plays this week, and counting on Rashard Higgins to get a touchdown. I'm worried. Yeah.
Dave, Baker Mayfield or Jared Goff if you had to start one of those two in a pinch?
Baker Mayfield. I mean, I think we're not giving Baker the love and respect he deserves. Look, is he a top 12 quarterback in the league? No, he's not. But he's a very serviceable quarterback. He's doing a decent job. We saw last week going to Njoku, he went for over 100 yards and a touchdown. He's going to Peoples-Jones, to Higgins. He's not afraid to air the ball out to different receivers. And he did well under pressure. I mean, that was an absolute nail-biter against the Chargers. So I definitely have a lot more faith in Baker, knowing that he might have to make a big comeback and, go to the air and throw for 200 yards in the last quarter.
No, on Wednesday's show, I mentioned talking with Mike Wohlert on the IDP side, who's from Cleveland. I asked him the question. I said, why the hate for Baker in Cleveland? Because I agree that I think Baker is, number one, he's the best quarterback Cleveland's had
easily.
And very, very long time. We went through the list of the options they've had, Cleveland fans. And he said sometimes, misery loves company. Misery loves misery sometimes. And some of these fans just want to feel pain and they just want to complain. Now, I think that real quarterback Baker's, I think fantasy-wise this week is a little challenging with those options or lack thereof, especially the offensive line concern. That has me a little worried. But, I still think that Baker can be Baker. That moxie, I didn't give you a great choice. Jared Goff on limited I'd say available talent around him. It's not exactly the easiest question. Here's an easy question. Is there anybody from Vegas or Denver hurt right now that has an impact on the game? Nope, not really. Jonathan Hankins at defensive tackle. It's about the only real thing to pay attention to. Dallas and New England. There's questions. We have to pay attention to Tyron Smith. He was limited practice on Thursday, did not practice on Friday, questionable with a neck injury. If Tyron Smith is banged up, look for that offensive line to have to try to shift some things around. And then on the defensive side, big loss potential is Trayvon Diggs. Trayvon Diggs, obviously the defensive, I'd say player of the year, but not really. He's probably the high. He's definitely a highlight. He has 5 right now. If he gets one this week, if he plays and gets one, he will tie the NFL record for 6 games in a row with an interception. He would tie. Do you know who he would tie?
Deion Sanders.
Tom Landry, old Dallas Cowboys coach, but he was with the New York Giants when he did that. So, look, hopefully Trayvon Diggs can get that interception. and tie that record. That would be fun. I like Trayvon Diggs. He's shockingly the better Diggs of the two so far on the season.
Hey, I'm watching this Jacksonville game, right? Are we concerned about Trevor Lawrence? Is he really the hype?
I'm concerned about Urban Meyer. I just don't think Urban Meyer's a great coach. Maybe at this level, I don't know if he knows exactly what he's doing. I said on Wednesday, the one thing with this team that we have to pay attention to is they had a very significant loss that probably went under the radar. Is their starting center is out for the game, and that is a huge loss, especially if you're. Go ahead.
Certain guys like Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes who can carry a team on their back. People were expecting that out of Trevor Lawrence. I'm not seeing it, to be honest. I mean, it's regardless of the coach is inaccurate, not running the ball well. I don't know. Not really a good game manager as well. But just curious what your thoughts are.
No, I mean, I don't know what I'm seeing when I'm looking at the box score here. The one thing that stands out to me again is one target to Laviska Shenault. And I don't know. I mean, look at last week. He finally got the ball in Chenault's hands, and he turned it
99, right?
He turned it into 50 yards.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a great showing. He's dynamic. But again, that's probably me just being hating because I have Laviska and I want him to do well, and I thought the situation presented itself. But speaking of that, Jonathan Klanowski, who's normally on with us, is at that game.
Oh, you kidding? Oh, that's right. Yeah.
No, he's there. And Billy Mustafa, another writer for Fantasy and Frames, is at the game. And I don't know. We'll have to check in and see. They supposedly we're going to meet up for a beer before the game. So look at that. We have two Fantasy and Frames writers that don't really know each other except for like writing, getting to potentially together before the London NFL game. I'm going to have a beer and kind of shoot the shit. So. It was like when we all finally met at the expo. It was a great time. Brian, next year you're gonna go and join us. It was a blast.
A few too many Manhattans, that's for sure.
Yeah. That's okay. It's all right. It was a rough week, but it was probably one of the definite highlights of the year so far. One of the lowlights is in the Seattle offense with Chris Carson going on the IR now because I have pretty heavily invested in him. Neck injury. Alex Collins coming in. Do we think Alex Collins against this stingy Pittsburgh defense is actually anything more than a deep flex play? Or either one of you two excited about him? Brian?
I think we're going to see more DJ Dallas. I know people are excited about Collins, but I think we're going to see an even DJ Dallas last year. A lot of people forget he was a pretty decent play for quite some time. When Chris Carson was out. So don't be surprised if you see DJ Dallas, in the red zone as well.
I've seen a bunch of people in my dynasty leagues picking up DJ Dallas if he wasn't already rostered in the last few days. I don't think they're going to be able to lean on the run as much as maybe they want to, and I think they're going to have to win with Geno. Mm-hmm. So if anything, he
didn't play too bad. I mean, let's be honest. That interception was an unlucky one. I mean, who was it? Tyler Lockett kind of stopped on his route. He should have caught that ball. I mean, give him credit. He did play relatively well.
Oh, I will for what the expectations were. But so DJ Dallas and they have another
Rashad
back
Penny?
there. Is Penny still out, right? So maybe they don't have any other options. Maybe that's all there is. On the other side, Pittsburgh really has no nagging injuries right now to pay attention to. Devin Bush is a little banged up, but I think he's going to play for sure. And then the last game, Buffalo, Tennessee. On the defensive side, Matt Milano has been questionable, should play, but then again, there's talks that maybe with the bye week coming up and he has his recurring hamstring injury that maybe he won't play. Again, Monday night, if you're an IDP, I would pivot from Milano. On Tennessee side, Julio and both A.J. Brown got full practices in. A.J. Brown's supposedly on a noticeable snap count. We're still throwing A.J. Brown into our lineup with Julio, but are we tempering expectations, Dave?
No, I mean, look, A.J. Brown is still a talent. You're not going to bench A.J. Brown. He's a guy who can similar to Tyreek, he has a potential of 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. I'm definitely not benching him. I mean, really, there's 2 passing options there. You've got AJ Brown and Quintorris Jones.
Yes, Quintorris.
What's his middle name? Quintorris something else. But nonetheless, I'm very happy to play him. He's going to be safe in PPR. Once again, it's all just coach speak. Oh yeah, we're going to limit his snaps and potential targets. When have you ever heard a coach say that? Everything's game script dependent. That's the God honest truth. So absolutely playing AJ Brown.
It's Lopez is his middle name. Quintorris Lopez Jones Jr.
Interesting.
Yeah, exactly. We're a teaching show. Exactly.
And there's about eight people's names who are different. Like Dak is something Raquin or something like that. Dak Prescott. His first name isn't Dak.
Yeah, we talked about that last year. We had a whole. We got on a lot of tangents, a lot of sides. Speaking of,
my biggest one is Matt Stafford. His name's John.
That's correct. Yes, I remember that. And shout out Ken Sonnenberg coming, says Fantasy and Frames is worldwide. Yes, we do kind of span the globe. It's kind of nice. It's really a lot of people ask me all the time, like, oh, you guys are rain. Jorge says rain.
Rain, there we go. That's it, rain.
Yeah, all over the globe. People just assume that everybody, all my friends that pay attention, just assume all you guys live here and they just don't know you somehow. And I was like, nope. Not even. I think I'm one person from the Midwest. Everybody else kind of spread around. We'll go out of the Midwest. Oh, actually, one more key thing to pay attention to is that Christian Fulton, starting corner for Tennessee, is out, meaning that Buffalo again has another. So their matchups right now, if you ask me, between Stephon Diggs and then the rest of that receiving core, it takes an uptick even more so. But if we're talking about players that are on an uptick, let's quickly kind of go through and maybe rattle off, maybe give a player per position that you might think, like at quarterback and tight end. We've done this outside the top 12, wide receiver, running back outside the top 24 that you think that may surprise somebody. Brian, give us a quarterback outside the top 12 that you think might surprise us.
Yeah. So, Houston is 17th versus quarterbacks, middle of the pack, but are people really needing to throw a lot against them? We saw that they kept competitive with New England. So I think that with Indy's defense, they can keep competitive with them, and I think they're going to have to go up and down the field. I don't think Indy's going to be able to lean on just ground and pound with JT this week. So therefore, ranked number 17 in Fantasy Pros, Carson Wentz, not a bad play. Went for over 400 yards against Baltimore last week.
Exactly, Dave. And you mentioned Michael Pittman as a potential. I think that is a guy at the wide receiver position that I could see outside the top 24 that kind of would go along with those lines with Carson Wentz. But at running back, Dave, who are you liking outside maybe the top 24 that you might think surprise us this week?
Now, I'm not sure if he's in the top 24 or not. Probably not. But Khalil Herbert, I'm a big fan of. Obviously, with Williams out, they're going to feed him the ball. Last week, I believe he got 13 carries. Did very good with those carries as well. So I think he's going to be the focal point of the offense, especially if they can get a bit of a lead. I'm pretty excited to see what he can do. I'm expecting at least 15 to 20 touches. So, he's a guy that was probably on your waiver wires. Might still be there. Who knows? But definitely for this week, he's a great play.
Nice. And he's 19, so he's still pretty far down for a starting role, considering most of the others in that range all are sharing or splitting snaps in some capacity. We talked about wide receivers and Michael Pittman, and there's one that I think that if we look down deep enough, and we've mentioned his name now a few different times in this, shockingly, is Amon-Ra St. Brown, who, for me this week, I look at and I think, you know what, no Quintez Cephas, no Tyrell then you look at the slot coverage of Mike Hilton, which is who's going to be lined up most likely with St. Brown. And Mike Hilton's not a pushover, but he's not any immediate threat. If you look at like certain weeks where in week 4, He allowed 8 receptions for 84 yards. He's allowed multiple touchdowns on the season. And if the last 2 weeks, Amon-Ra St. Brown has now totaled 16 targets from Jared Goff, 13 receptions, 135 yards. Still looking for that first touchdown. But against a Cincinnati defense that allows the 4th most receptions to opposing wide receivers and the 10th most yards, I think this situation is prime for Amon-Ra St. Brown to be that easy wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 1, 2, maybe not wide receiver 1, but pretty close with the number of bye weeks and injuries that we look at. I could very easily see him finish with 16 fantasy points and half-point PPR scoring if he gets in that end zone.
And one more thing on that game and on the Lions and Bengals. The Bengals actually give up the 6th fewest points against tight end, right?
Oh.
So everybody thinks Hawk is the wide receiver 1, so to speak. There, he's had a couple down weeks, got a banged up knee, I think.
Yep, he does.
So and Detroit could very easily get behind in that game. You might see Amon-Ra St. Brown and maybe who's ranked 49, and maybe even Khalif Raymond, who's ranked number 60, get some looks.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. And I think the best thing that can happen is that Hockenson plays. I think we want Hockenson out there, especially as like that decoy to occupy middle and draw some of that coverage away, so that Amon-Ra St. Brown can get some, quite a bit more of those one-on-ones, especially with Mike Hilton. Dave, you have another wide receiver? Anybody?
I do, and he's probably rostered, but I'm pretty sure he's going to be outside of the top 24. Emmanuel Sanders has been looking absolutely incredible. I mean, truthfully, his usage compared to Diggs is pretty 50-50. Using him on underneath routes, looking for him on go balls. I mean, he's very much a using the cliche Swiss Army knife of wide receivers. I think he's even had a couple of rushing attempts. So, someone that once again is probably your wide receiver 3 or 4. He's getting the touchdowns, getting the targets. I'm very excited to see what he can do.
Absolutely, Tennessee ranked 32nd against wide receivers, dead last.
Exactly, and you throw in one more little wrinkle on that whole situation is that Tennessee plays man-to-man in like 80% of the snaps, and they lose who I mentioned earlier, Christian Fulton, their starting corner. Obviously, that pays dividends for both Stephon Diggs and Emmanuel Sanders. Emmanuel Sanders has 10 targets against man-to-man, has a heavy catch rate in that situation. Look for both of those two to just feast against that Tennessee secondary.
The other tight end I wanted to give an honorary mention to, and this is not the Patriots fan in me, but Hunter Henry has been looking good. Mac Jones has been looking for him a lot, starting to get the targets, especially in the dumpster fire that is the tight end pool this year. It is really tough to find a reliable target source for tight ends. So he's getting red zone looks, he's getting targets in the middle. So he's probably on your waiver wire. I've seen him on waiver wire in a ton of leagues. If not, he's very, very seldom rostered. So he's someone who I've got no problem firing up this week.
If I could go at tight end,
You may.
Yeah, Cook is ranked number 13. Baltimore is ranked 30th versus tight ends. We may see Williams be the decoy, so maybe down in the red zone he's looking Cook's way more. And I will also throw a dart that Pat Freiermuth finds the end zone against Seattle. No Juju. Some of those low depth of target throws got to go somewhere. Maybe it's James Washington. Maybe it's Pat Freiermuth.
Maybe. In paying homage to the fantasy footballers, the Muth is Luth is, I believe, what they've been saying. And that makes me laugh every time as well. What doesn't make me laugh, it makes me it doesn't make me laugh. It's Houston Texans defense against tight ends, 20.8 fantasy points on average, dead last in the NFL. They get to face the behemoth of a man, Mo Alley Cox, who I have, as we all know, I've been a Mo Alley Cox fan for a while now. And I think that the targets, what he can do with those, obviously with any of the tight ends outside the top 2, touchdown dependent is pretty much all we're looking for. And I think Mo Alley Cox has a decent opportunity to get in the end zone against Houston. He's close. I tell you, with the TJ Hockenson knee in Cincinnati, I've had to move Hockenson down quite a bit. And I'm starting to maybe get close to moving Mo Cox into my top 15, top 12. So a little crazy there.
Nate, do you want to talk about our Cleveland running back super sleepers?
I think that's. I tell you what. Why don't we can each give one? I'll say that with Kareem Hunt potential for snap counts or whatever it may be, there's a chance that they might work Dearness Johnson into this conversation. Last year he was the fab killer. I call him because I spent quite a bit of money on him when Cleveland when he came in and he got that big second half. I don't remember who was even against, but he ate up a lot of people's fab. This week the same. He looks like he's more of a threat to get some snaps. But between there's two. So Dearness Johnson is an option, and the other, Brian, go ahead.
So ranked number 56 in Fantasy Pros half PPR, Demetric Felton, a rookie on Cleveland. He's seen a couple good plays.
Sounds like a fancy cocktail you order.
Right, yeah.
And bars, you know.
He's got at least one. Oh, I'm sorry. He's got at least one touchdown this year. I think they're not going to be able to feed the running back on a ground and pound type thing. So I think if there's one backup that gets more work, it's maybe trying to get the ball to Demetric Felton in space. Again, super sleeper, not saying he's going to blow up to running back one, but you never know.
Exactly. And that's all you're looking for. And I don't know if these are plays that a lot of people are going to have in their normal leagues where they're not buy dependent. If it, you mentioned some teams that have CMC and David Montgomery, and their third might have been lucky enough to say, I don't even know, person who's out, insert other random running back who's banged up. There's so many of them now, it's hard to keep track of. But, yeah, crazier situations.
Have a stud, what I thought was a stud dynasty team with CMC, Saquon. I had Chris Carson as my running back 3. Mm-hmm. I'm now rolling with James Conner and Sony Michel as my running back 1 and 2. So, I don't want to look at it. So it's like when you had a big night and spent a lot, you don't want to look at your credit card statement.
Exactly.
I'm treating my fantasy team. I'm like, it's there. It's going to do what it does. I'll pretend like it doesn't exist.
So anyway. I'm going to jam in a quick start sit here for you.
Yeah.
Speaking of James Conner, Scott Fishbowl, flex. James Conner at Cleveland, Javonte Williams versus Las Vegas.
I'm going James Conner just because he's got more of a chance of getting a look in the red zone. They do like him in the red zone, but it's very touchdown dependent.
Yeah, and that's it really is hard to pass up on. I believe I'll double check real quick. I think he's number 2 in the NFL in touchdowns. He is. He's tied for second with Hunt and Zeke. Touchdown dependency against this defense that I think they'll still be able to move the ball. I just think that I'm going to probably go Conner as well. I like Javonte Williams a lot, but I feel like Conner has a better chance. Well, actually, you know what? Hold on. Let me backtrack. I'm talking in circles real quick because I also want to see what Chase Edmonds' status is real quick because I see an alert come up for him, but I think that might just be the same one that says he has a chance to play. If Chase Edmonds is actually out, pay attention to that. If for some reason he misses time, that's a smash play for Conner, if you ask me. But I'm not going to make it easy. I'm going to say Javonte Williams. Okay. I think against the Las Vegas run, personally, I think you have a better chance of Javonte having one half of a duo being productive, just because Cleveland's been pretty stingy against the run. I mean, they've only allowed 2 touchdowns on the season rushing.
I feel the Broncos are really playing a hot hand approach, and I get it. Most teams play that anyway.
Right.
But there's been a couple of games where Melvin Gordon's looked good and he's got the looks. On the other hand, I've seen a lot of games where Javonte Williams looked good and he's gotten the looks. And you're really relying on the Broncos having a positive game script. Yeah. The 3 weeks they were doing well was the 3 weeks that they won, the first 3 weeks. Last 2 weeks, Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, they've been there. They've probably got you okay points, but nothing that you're writing home to mum about,
Yeah, and maybe that's a little bit to do with it as well, is that if there's ever a concern for an offense to stumble and not get everything going and firing on all cylinders, is when your head coach is gone and you're relying on play calling to fall into the hands of a person who pretty much is, new at it in Vegas. So there's a chance that Vegas's offense is a little slow, and Denver's defense is already pretty dangerous, where they could actually control the ball. There's a lot of what ifs in this conversation. What if Arizona gets out to an early lead and gets plenty of touches in the red zone? James Conner is a smash play because he could get 2 touchdowns and 40 yards. What if it's the Broncos get up to a lead and Javonte gets the hot hand and busts off the 70-yarder like Melvin Gordon did, which is, in my opinion, the biggest reason why Gordon's numbers look as great as they do is that one run. But you're right, Dave. It is definitely a 50-50. There's no, we're going to stick with Javonte and move Melvin Gordon to the back seat. He's still sitting shotgun and they're taking turns driving. And I hate that.
On the same token, I feel Chuba Hubbard, is it his name? Chuba? Is being a little bit overhyped like that. That really is more of a split backfield than people like to mention, to be honest. But he's not CMC. They're not using him like CMC. So my one thing is proceed with caution with Hubbard this week.
It's fair. It's fair. Any other plays that any of you guys want to even talk about? I mean, I think for the most part, we've pretty much covered everything. On the, I guess, IDP side, I'm sorry, I didn't even touch on that. Heaven forbid. On defensive line, outside the top 12, top 24, I like, outside the top 12, Josh Allen, not the Buffalo Bills quarterback, but the Jacksonville Jaguars starting defensive end. Josh Allen's had tons of good pressure. Love the opportunity. Oh wait, he's playing right now. I can't even mention him.
Graduated from the high school where I teach.
Really?
Yeah.
Look at that. I forgot they're playing right now. So maybe he has a sack and then I just look really smart, or he's not done anything. But outside the top 24, Everson Griffin, defensive end for Minnesota Vikings in that game we were just talking about. The Carolina offensive line has allowed pretty heavy pressures. Last week, I believe it was 30 against the Philadelphia Eagles. Minnesota doesn't quite have the defensive line, I don't think. At least Everson Griffin doesn't have that huge 3-sack game upside or anything like that. But I think there is a chance that he does get to the quarterback a few times. At linebacker, we talked on the Chargers side that both Nasir Adderley and Drew Tranquill are out. That means more opportunities for Kazir White to step in and get pretty significant tackle volume. Derwin James is obviously going to have his fill, but I like that Kazir White upside. He's not my favorite linebacker as far as overall skill set, but he can be dynamic and get some of them splash plays, which we all covet, especially at the linebacker in a weakened week. And then at safety, as we got like Justin Reed, he's down. He gets Indianapolis. I think that we talked about Carson Wentz in a passing game, but I still think this is a game that's going to be led by Jonathan Taylor, and Houston should be in a negative game script, meaning that he's going to have plenty of opportunity to stay up in the box and accumulate some tackles. And that does it for this week 6 infirmary episode. Where Dave, thank you very much for joining us. If people who watching this don't know who you are, they're here by accident. But tell us what you got going on, buddy.
So I've got an app, Connect Go, launching in the next couple of weeks, but was formerly Fantasy Go. So if you follow me on Twitter at Fantasy Go NFL, you'll see the updates when it's live on the App Store, which should hopefully be in very late October, very early November.
Wonderful.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And Brian, of course.
So you can follow me at Twitter at @FFJunkie_. I'm on the Wednesday Night Fantasy and Frames podcast as well. And I have a relatively new Dynasty podcast that I co-host, Dynasty Fever. And you can follow that at Dynasty Fever Pod on Twitter.
And I believe the Dynasty Fever Pod is also ran through Dynasty Pandemic. If you have not followed the guys over at Dynasty Pandemic, do so now. It's a great collection of individuals. It's a great collection of content where if you're up and coming and you want to get your information out there, the guys over there are doing a phenomenal job of spreading just the information. They're doing what we all say we want to do, is build each other up and help grow this this sport, this game, this love, this passion. And yet, as while many people who are trying to stay afloat are quick to put their foot down on others to gain that competitive edge, Dynasty Pandemic definitely is a helping hand to help lift each other up, hopefully like we have done for everybody listening today. So if you have any more start and sit questions or any questions in general, follow Dave Abraham at Fantasy Go, Brian at FFJunkie_, and me at Nate Markham. So hopefully your week 6 is a success. Good luck, everybody.